Okay, welcome everyone, and to the September 21st, 2021 council meeting. I would like to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed and will be available on the town website at www.parrysound.ca. Prior to the open session, council met for a closed meeting. It was moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor McCann. Pursuant to section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act, SO 2001 C25 is amended. Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to a meeting closed to the public in order to address matters pertaining to B, personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, waterfront advisory committee applications. C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for municipal or local board purposes, road allowance 60A Seguin Street. F, advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, Parry Sound Area Municipal Airport. K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Road allowance 60A Seguin Street, return of Belvedere Heights beds to Ministry of Long-Term Care. That resolution was passed and the meeting was held. I would like at this time to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty and the waterways traveled by the Métis of this particular area. Before we get into the actual meeting itself, I would like to make an announcement of the Civic Scholarship Award to Stephanie Harris. And Stephanie is online with us tonight. Each year since 2017, the town of Parry Sound has awarded a $500 scholarship to a Parry Sound student enrolled in their second year of accredited college or university. The successful candidate for the town's civic scholarship must demonstrate leadership on school or community organizations and make a commitment to volunteer service and help others. This year's recipient of the Civic Scholarship Award is Stephanie Harris. Stephanie is in her second year of the practical nursing program at Canadore College. With the current shortage in nursing staff, Stephanie expects to be employed in some capacity in her chosen field upon graduation, hopefully in the Parry Sound area. Stephanie has related experience as a personal support care worker at Lakeland Long-Term Care and a degree in social work. She has been part of the Pickering Provincial Soccer team and hopes to continue supporting soccer locally by volunteering to coach young children entering the sport. So we say congratulations to Stephanie and expect you can put the award to good use, and we look forward to seeing you in the nursing profession within a year or so. So congratulations. And Stephanie, if you've got a couple of words you want to say, that would be good.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you for the town of Parry Sound for offering a scholarship to second year students. And I am really excited and looking forward to being done with school and working within the community, especially at times like this. There's such a shortage. And I just wanted to say I'm excited and looking forward also in following in my grandmother's footsteps, Frida Harris, who also worked at St. Joe's back in the day. And I will be putting this money towards something like my temp license, my registration, or even my tuition. So just want to say thank you for the opportunity.
Very good. Thank you very much. And good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda? I know that under deputations, we do have a deputation when we get to it, which wasn't on the agenda, but there will be now. Any prioritization? No? Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the agenda? Councillor Borneman?
Actually, I see in our visitors list there, the folks from Andre Vovchenko is in attendance, so I'm wondering if that,
That's the
item-
deputation.
yeah, so I'm wondering if that bylaw could be moved up, Mr. Mayor, as well.
Oh, okay. Someone got the number on that one?
I think it's 10-1-1.
Yep. So moving up 10-1-1. Okay. Any other? No. Now, did I get a mover and seconder yet? Oh, it was Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann. That the council agenda for September 21st, 2021 be approved as amended. Any discussion? Further discussion? No. Anyone opposed to the passing of that resolution? No, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Nope. Okay. May I have a mover and seconder for the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 7th? Mover and seconder. Councillor Horn, Councillor Burden. That the minutes from the regular council meeting held September 7th, 2021 be approved as circulated. Any discussion? No. Anyone opposed to the passing of the resolution for the minutes? No, that's carried then. Questions of staff. And I have one to start off with I think an explanation as to how this is all going to work, and we have our Director of Public Works here, and we have Mike Kearns, and we have April McNamara from the BOCC and Parks. It has to do with the new provincial regulations with regard to the mandate for vaccine passport to be able to enter recreation facilities. And this not only goes for that, but also the Stocky Center as well. Can you give us an update on what's happening with the new mandated rules and regulations from the province and how we're handling this?
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Mayor. I think I'll defer to Ms. McNamara. She's much more fluent in the moving parts right now.
Good evening, your Mayor, Worship, and Council members. The province has mandated dual vaccine, proof of dual vaccine for entry to all public recreation facilities starting tomorrow, actually. So what that means is anybody over the age of 18, or actually, sorry, let me back up. Anybody over the age of 12 who is not actively participating in sport at the time of facility entry is required to produce proof of dual vaccine. So that's proof of dual vaccine plus those mandated 14 days. All the communication information about the current requirements is communicated on the town's webpage. This has also been circulated to all of our major facility user groups with the ask that they circulate that through their groups and memberships, because there are a few little hiccups, I'll say, and a few exceptions to this rule. And what I mean by that is any youth under the age of 12, regardless participating in organized sport or not, is not required to produce said vaccine. Same case for those with doctor's note or medical exemption. There is language around what is accepted, and all that information is posted on the town's website. In preparation of our ICE users and all our programming returning to the community center next week. All our outdoor and indoor signage on the front doors, and we'll have some placards out front. All of that signage will be reflective of the new requirements for facility access. If anybody has any questions, Staff, we strongly urge the public to access the town's website for that information. It is quite clear and descriptive as to what is required, how people, if you don't have that information or if you're unsure how to access that information, we explain how you can get that. For example, we have had a few calls from concerned senior citizens who don't have access to a computer, to a printer maybe at home, or to a smartphone where they can download this passport easily. We've been explaining to those persons that don't forget there is the library. They do have computers available for access. We have verified with the CEO of the library that yes, they are willing to help those in need of printing a copy of said passport. Thank you, Mayor McGarvey, for the opportunity to explain that to the public.
Good. Well, thank you. I think it's really important. I think a lot of people are playing catch up in a hurry right now, so it's good. Councillor Borneman.
Well, further to your query, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure if this is for Mr. Thompson or who he might delegate it to, but I see a number of communities, larger urban centers to Seguin Township and others passing bylaws with respect to those who were able to attend within municipal offices, those who can participate, what is expected of employees, contractors, members of council, boards, and so on, also complying with certain rules and regarding proof of vaccination. And I'm wondering, Mr. Thompson, if we are in the throes of contemplation about how best to manage that situation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, staff have discussed this particular issue. Through the entire pandemic for the past 18 months, staff have been very clear in our approach, and that was to take our lead from public health throughout all the recommendations that are in place. I'll remind everyone that we have been providing services, our entire gamut of services throughout the entire pandemic. Many municipalities did not. However, we have, although we had to modify how we did that, we were still able to provide all services that we would normally provide to residents and people from outside the area. In fact, throughout the early stages of the pandemic, many municipalities were sending people to us for things like marriage licenses and such, as we were still providing those services. Now, as we move forward, there are a lot of different approaches occurring right now throughout the municipal, especially the municipal world. Again, our approach from a staff level has been to take our lead from public health. Currently, public health has recommended mandatory vaccines and a vaccine policy for healthcare providers, for cross-border traveling organizations such as the railways and airports. They have not suggested at this point that for local government or office operations it is necessary. Late last week, our local health unit did provide a toolkit to help organizations take a look at vaccine policies moving forward. Staff currently are looking at that toolkit, seeing how it could apply to us. And in the future, we'll be making recommendations to council if we believe that there is a need for modifications for what we're doing. I believe the mayor will be also providing an announcement later on in this meeting with what we're going to be doing for office operations moving forward as well. So it is on our radar. We're following public health advice on any recommendations that will be moving forward. And if we see a need for those types of decisions to be made from council, we'll be bringing something forward to council at that time.
Okay, good. Councillor McCann?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question would be for Mr. Cairns. I was asked this last week and I didn't have an answer, so I said I'll ask during our next meeting. And so people are starting to remove foam from their docks, their floating docks, cottages and such. They're asking how they can get rid of the foam. Can they take it to the McFarland transfer station? What, if any way, is there an opportunity for them to properly dispose of the foam and anything else like that that's coming out of the water, as we've found out has been so dangerous to the environment?
Yes, through you, your worship. So I think, we probably all heard over the last number of years the term unencapsulated foam. And that's typically nowadays the blue foam that we see washing up on the shore. Unfortunately, there's no great way to recycle this material. It does become dislodged and causes an awful lot of headaches on the shorelines in terms of cleanup. I've been involved in some areas that experienced quite a bit of it. And it's actually hard to go around the shore of Georgian Bay without being able to spot that somewhere along the shoreline. So I would suggest that, unfortunately, there isn't a great process for recycling it. So disposal is really the only option. So again, I think when you mentioned docks, I guess, we have a number of them in town. There's a lot of them that are from other municipalities, and I would encourage those folks to certainly approach their local municipality for disposal options. But probably, unfortunately, disposal is the only option if it is done its life cycle. And some of the suggestions from some of the organizations are that perhaps that's the best thing to do to remove it from the water. So just to be clear, then where can they take them then? Would they go to a landfill site? Yes, ultimately that would be the end disposal site. We don't currently have a viable option for recycling of that foam, and I'm not sure where one exists, within our catchment area. Unfortunately, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. And there's always that caveat with recyclables, recyclable where facilities exist, and unfortunately, they're not that widespread.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Keith?
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Cairns, and we are a day from fall, and Cascade sidewalk is still on my mind. On the hill going downwards, of course, I noticed that the railroad nicely put a nice quite clear yellow sign basically on both shall we say, entrances that would be crossing the tracks to let people, it's cautionary to basically say it's lessen the importance of respecting the train. So I thought that was really nice. However, and certainly very safety oriented. However, I'm still on a roll. What is the status, please, of the handrail going down? Because we are getting closer to the cold weather, as much as I don't like to say those words. Thank you.
Certainly, through your worship. So I'll just clarify, actually, our staff were the ones that installed the decals. They were supplied by CN. And actually, I'm going to kind of hijack the comment for a moment, and just this is Rail Safety Week across North America. So that is a very important message. It's look, listen, live, and there is a .ca on that. Those signs, they're on Forest Street, Cascade Street, and on Church Street as well. So thank you for mentioning those. But so our staff did their thermoplastic. They are for that reason. Now to get to your question directly. So I have a meeting this week with a company that's able to provide us with a safe design, because this is a non-standard installation. There is typically, when we design municipal infrastructure, we refer to the Ontario provincial standards to guide us in terms of standard installations. This is in no way standard, and this is in no way addressed within the provincial guidelines. So we're looking at a custom installation. Part of the issue with the former railing, from what I understand, was from a road maintenance perspective. Where it was located was difficult in terms of sidewalk maintenance in the wintertime in particular. It's never an issue in the summertime, but winter is challenging. So we have to make sure it's offset the base enough and that it still functions as intended with the new installation.
Mr. Mayor,
go
so
ahead.
my
Yep.
retort back would be two things. One, am I understanding that should be installed this fall, early winter? Is that what I'm understanding? And number two, when it is installed, I would be suggesting we at least have something like a cutting of a yellow ribbon or something, because this is an issue that people do want. And I think it would be an opportunity to say, we are hearing and we've done our best. Please advise.
Certainly, through your worship, that's our intention. I'm hoping this is just the first day of fall. I hope it doesn't come too quickly, but our intention is to deal with the issue as quickly as we can. So, as I said, it's not going to be the best day to meet outside this week, but we all have rain suits and umbrellas, so that won't stop us from doing that.
Okay, any further questions of staff? Councillor Bachman. Councillor Bachman, it looks like, or it sounds like you've got some internet issues. Sorry. Any other members of council? Nope. Okay. Correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Worship, we just have one item of correspondence from Janice Heidman, the General Manager of Parry Sound Area Community Business and Development Commission. And it is a letter of appreciation for the town's contribution towards the Community Business and Development Corporation, as the town has given some funds this year. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have a deputation that was added to the agenda, and it's from Andrei Bobchenko. And Andrei, I understand you want to speak about the building on the corner of Gibson and McMurray.
Exactly.
Okay, you do have, your opportunity is 10 minutes. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So,
thank you. I think I can be even shorter.
that's good.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So we want to talk about the possibility of amendments in the design of the building, which was suggested before. It is a 5-story building with underground parking. Since May, we decided to remove the commercial space, which was one of the issues on the previous council, and so there will not be any cafe, any bar, or any art gallery. There will be 2 apartments on the ground floor, and that's it. So that's so the building will be completely residential, and in conformity with the residential zoning there. Regarding the height of the building, I know that the people, or some people, doesn't like the 5-story building. They want to see this lower building, and why we stuck on the 5? Because it's pure commercial stuff. With a 4 or 5-story building, we still have to make underground parking, and therefore all the expenses will be spread to the smaller quantity of apartments. We make the budget. It's very clear with the 4-story building. The possible sales price and the expenses, so the difference is about $800,000, which is really about maybe 10% of expenses or expected expenses, taking into account the turbulence on the market and the possible, increasing of expenses. And we don't want to be like, if we come to zero, it will be fine. But we don't have any real reserve for possible marketing fluctuations, and therefore we can easily come to losses. It's a let's say, I must say it's a high-tech building. It's with lots of HVAC engineering. We want to install the solar panels, and we want to add the rain harvesting. So it's quite expensive stuff. If we make it cheaper, we will change the concept. And first of all, if we reduce the height, we have to redesign completely, remove the, first of all, remove underground parking, which is a substantial part of expenses. So, frankly, taking into account our climate, underground parking is a serious value in Parry Sound. So that's probably, I can show you the figures, but I don't think it, make things better. Yeah. So that's how it is. That's concerning this exactly object. So because we don't have any problem with the 911 Church Street, so that's fine.
Okay. All right, thank you. Are there any questions from council members at this time? Be an opportunity if you have any questions for Andre. No, I'm not seeing any at the moment. So
yeah, I'm open. I can answer any question you want.
Yeah.
Maybe you have any concerns or want to specify something. Yes, please.
Councilor Borneman.
So, Mr. Volchenko, obviously you've heard the concerns of the neighbors in the area. One of the suggestions in the report that council received is that we might consider deferring this matter so further conversation could occur. Is there any, in your mind, would there be any potential benefits in so doing?
I'm afraid I'm not completely understand. Sorry, English is not my first language. You said
okay, so the neighbors are concerned about your proposal.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Staff says that maybe council should defer this, put it off to allow more discussion to take place.
Okay. Yes. For
is there any potential for some compromise here to make this more acceptable to the neighbors and still workable to you, or are we at a point where it's either yes or no?
I understand. So it could be deferred, definitely. The only thing the design takes time, and the construction period may start at the end of April, May, dependently on this, on how God will bless this Parry Sound with the weather. So no problem with that. A month is, if a month or two is okay, that's fine. But we will just shorten with the design time. It takes time. It takes 6 months or something like that. If we will let's say, forced to reduce the height, we will have to just to change completely the concept. So, and it might be, instead of this apartment building, it might be like a stacked townhouses in 2 levels or something like that. With the parking nearby, we will try to make it similar. So it will be 4-story, it will be lower, but it will be different concept. So it will not be like that you see before. Yes.
Councillor Keith has a question.
Yes, what I was curious about was, in your viewpoint, why did you like the idea of having commercial in that building?
Before, not now.
Mhm.
Yeah. Why? You know, it was, it's a downtown. Frankly, especially during tourist season, everything is quite packed. This summer is not really can demonstrate it because of COVID, but in general, I remember the first time I came to Parry Sound in summertime, it was like crowded city and you hardly can come to any place. But again, we respect the neighborhood, and if people concerned about the, let's say, the more tourists in area, more maybe noise in area, more cars in the area, it's better than to remove it completely and just have residential. That's the only idea. We have plans to build more, and if we will have a bit good spot, we will build a commercial space in other place. It's not a problem.
Okay. I have 2 questions. The first one on the property on Gibson and McMurray. Were there any pre-considerations or sort of expectations from the seller that you understood that put certain conditions on what could be built on the property?
On McMurray?
Yeah, on Gibson McMurray.
So you said about the preconditions or what?
Was there any documentation provided to you or whatever that set out certain conditions initially that were expectations? That
for sure. Initially, this zoning presupposed a single family house, maximum height of 12 meters, and with the quite standard, construction spot similar to neighbors across the Gibson, for instance, something like that. But it's a corner spot which is not very comfortable for such a housing. On the other side, we have Salvation Army, which is quite like an office building, let's say, and across the street we have Ford dealership, also contemporary stuff, and so we decided that, again, as far as we know, that with the likes of housing in Parry Sound area, the density of housing and the rising of the density is to benefit to the city, and so on this spot we can have 16 units instead of 1, or let's say maybe 2.
Okay.
If we decide to make it townhouses, they might be like 8 only, but they will be cheaper. That's how things are going on.
Okay. My other question is when do you think you'll start the building on Church Street?
We expect to start in spring again. End of April, May, we will have to demolish the old building, house, yes, first. Then there will be underground parking in that spot.
Yep.
So that's the earlier the better, but it depends on the weather.
Okay. All right. Councillor McCann.
Well, I have a question. It sounds like the whole purpose the building has been redefined, or the purpose or the use has been changed, in that now there's no commercial. And maybe Mr. Mayor, maybe Mr. Elgie could answer this question if he's still online. Does that change the zoning? Is there a requirement for zoning? We've seen in other places where the purpose, the use has changed for a building. It's often meant that we had to change the bylaw. They needed to ask for a variance. So I'm wondering, is that pending if you've changed your mind on what kind of a building you're putting up?
I think that's a question for Mr. Algie.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Through your worship, yes, I believe I understand the question. I would agree that would be the case. If this is going towards a total redesign, I believe it would warrant a new type of application. I can discuss that a little bit further once the item comes up, but largely I'm thinking what the applicant has said tonight, and Andre can correct me if I'm misinterpreting, but if they can't get this 5-story concept to work, there is almost no point in bouncing it back to discuss 4 or 3 stories, because it's just not financially viable, and it requires an entire redesign. And in that case, maybe this item should be defeated, not because we don't want to work with a developer, but rather if it is going to be redesigned, a new amendment should be circulated that shows what the new concept is, because it could be a little bit misleading to the public that if this gets deferred and then comes back in 6 months under an entirely different idea, and it gets approved at that point, it's not as transparent as it could be, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Are we, Mr. Algie, if you could stay there for a moment. Defeat or deferral? Like, deferral would give us 2 weeks to have that conversation with Mr. Vuchenko. And then we could decide where we're going after that.
That is the option. Sorry, through your worship. I just believe I heard Mr. Vuchenko say that if 5 stories doesn't work, it needs a 6-month redesign. So that's why
So the redesign of the concept may take maybe at least a month, but not.
Okay.
I don't think more. Yeah. It's so new concept might be in a month. We just have to hire architect for that job.
Yeah.
And
So
would it be roughly in the same design, like
no. That the fact is that with the 4-story, we will not go underground parking. We will not make it, and it will be on ground parking. It might be like a stock townhouses, something like that.
That's what he mentioned. So I think probably until we know is deferral, and then have your discussions and then see where we go from there.
Good.
Okay. Councillor McCann.
Just a quick follow-up then, just to clarify then. So am I correct, if the use of a building has changed, if you're going strictly residential, does that require a variance if the zoning does not permit for that at the time, or at least in this particular location?
No, we have to anyhow. We will keep residential zoning, but we will have to make variances because we have smaller setbacks. Because
well, you were going to have a cafe and
no, there will not be any cafe.
But that was in the original plan.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if now that you're getting away from the commercial, will you have to revisit the zoning situation?
I think that's an answer for Taylor.
Yeah.
Yes, there's still height and setback and lot coverage exemptions being requested. So and form of development. So that is correct, Mr. Pan. Yes, they can avoid a variance / rezoning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to know. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Shenko? No? Okay, well, I want to thank you very much for being here. We do appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Having this discussion.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks. Okay, it's reports time, and I will go by across the screen who I can see first. Councillor Burden is first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. On September 8th, I attended the monthly meeting of the Downtown Business Association. And then on September 17th, I attended a special meeting of the DBA to get the board's feelings on the proposed building that we were just discussing. The board appears to be in favor of that building in its revised form. On September 20th, I took part in a meeting of the Industrial Park Board to discuss further proposals for lot purchases. The board approved the lot sales and things are rolling right along at the park. Lots of future jobs if everything goes along as planned. This morning, September 21st, I attended a roundtable event in Port Carling to discuss how best to proceed with the issues surrounding mental health and addictions in the province, and particularly in the Parry Sound Muskoka riding. The event was hosted by our MPP, Norm Miller, and Minister Michael Tavolo, who is the Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, which is part of the Ministry of Health. The minister made it very clear that he was passionate about these issues and made it clear that he is prepared to do whatever he can to help deal with them. There were representatives there from the DSAB, from the Social Services Board, mental health, HANDS, health centers, both Parry Sound and Muskoka, and others. Every person there was asked for their input, their concerns, their opinions as to what needs to be done. The COVID pandemic has greatly exacerbated the problems, and things could get tough when COVID-related funding ends, and many of the problems will remain. Minister Tabolo gave all in attendance his personal email address, so to expedite messages getting to him. I believe he is very sincere, and it was a very worthwhile meeting. I was glad I attended it, and that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, staff, and the public. A short report here. Just one meeting to report on, the Parry Sound Public Library Board meeting. What made this very special was the fact that it was in person. So we got together Wednesday morning, September 8th, in the auditorium downstairs at the library. Business as usual in terms of whatever usual is and whatever normal is in this day and age. We talked about an HR policy, diversity and inclusion, and our financial report was received. We heard from our CEO and her report. We have a new circulation person on board now. And we've talked about free fines. I guess maybe that's a bit of a contradiction in terms, but many libraries are now looking at doing away with fines for late books, but accepting donations. And people seem happier to give a donation rather than to pay a late fine for a book. Now, books that are lost or not returned ultimately are the financial responsibility of the borrower. But we continue to practice all of the safety concerns as far as where we are right now in the province with COVID-19. Some upcoming programs, dates to be announced yet: a children's story time, a surfing senior, and a Halloween spooky crawl. These are some of the items that are scheduled, and Rita and the staff continue to do a great job there, and we certainly are turning this library into a real leader in its field, and not just in this region but across Northern Ontario. We're turning a lot of heads, so thank you to our staff and to Rita, and that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Horn.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On Monday, September 13th, I attended the Parry Sound Area Chamber of Commerce meeting. A reminder that the 2021 Business Excellence Awards are this Friday, September 24th, and tickets are available at the Chamber website. Limited number of tickets. The celebration will be on the Island Queen. Boarding will start at 5 o'clock. sail at 5:30 and return to the dock at 7:30, 8 o'clock. Again, limited number of tickets on sale because of COVID. If you're interested in purchasing tickets, once again, please go to the Chamber website. Thanks. That's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Borneman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. Through the past couple of weeks, I've continued to attend my regular meetings at the airport Belvedere. And last night, unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, I missed the meeting at the industrial park Councillor Burden referred to. Tonight, I wanted to make comment on a situation that exists in Parry Sound and many other communities that's really beyond council's scope, but something that touches everyone in our communities. This past week, we saw 2 deaths due to overdose, as well as a 3rd reported incident, and how many others that don't make the headlines or don't make the papers, I don't know. To me, this is a totally unacceptable situation. Much like mental health, it's an intensely personal situation, but one that the rest of us tend to sweep under the rug and look the other way. Having said that, there is help available in our community. I've spoken to people at Community Mental Health Association. They are available to counsel, assess, refer, help folks who are involved in these activities take the appropriate action and refer them to the appropriate resources. The use of opioids is especially concerning. I was advised that the use of these substances is far-ranging in our communities, from seniors trying to manage chronic pain to those involved with injury recovery or dealing with pain as a result of maybe from their place of employment or injuries that they've suffered, to those who are abusing and thrill-seeking. Naloxone kits are available in the community. Community mental health can assist in the provision of such kits and training that's needed to use them. If you have a friend or a family member who has an opioid medication prescribed, you should think about having a naloxone kit. If you have a family member or a friend who's experimenting or abusing with opioids, you need to look into acquiring a naloxone kit. People experiencing homelessness and food uncertainty are particularly vulnerable and more likely to experience overdose as a result of a feeling of hopelessness and despair. Community mental health can be contacted at 705-746-4264. This isn't going to cure it, but hopefully it will start to raise awareness and maybe a bit of a discussion in the community, so as people have some idea where they can reach out to for help. On a more positive note, after a 1-year hiatus due to COVID, the Turkeys for Tummies program is returning to the community. This is a grassroots program with the goal of providing families in need with a real Thanksgiving dinner. This year, their hope is to provide dinner to 60 families. To do this, they need food, funds, and volunteers. If you want to refer a family, make a donation, or become a volunteer to cook or deliver dinner leading up to Thanksgiving, please contact Krista Holmes or Shepherd Campbell at their Facebook page, Parry Sound Area Turkeys for Tummy, or at the website adoptaFamilyThanksgivingMeal@gmail.com. I've been involved with this for a few years, Mr. Mayor, and I think it's an extremely worthwhile endeavor, and look forward to participation from the community. Thank you.
That's good. Good. Thank you. Councillor Bachman.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to report on 2 meetings that I attended since our last council meeting on September 9th. I attended the Wellness Center and Pool Committee meeting, at which we moved forward, and I'm sure Mayor McGarvey will report on that in more fulsome role. And on September 20th, yesterday, I attended the Industrial Park board meeting, and we continue to have great success at the park. And we should have a lot of construction happening there over the next year, and which will be very beneficial to our economic development and job creation. So I'm very pleased to be able to participate on that board. And thank you very much. That is my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. I did not have any meetings to attend in the last couple of weeks, but because I feel that as a councillor for myself and being concerned about the health and safety of others, that I took it upon myself to attend a first aid 16-hour course, which involved, of course, CPR, level C of the course, and AED. It was conducted by Danny Shoebottom of Always Be Safe. And as I indicated, it was a 16-hour course, and I found it really, I've taken one some years ago, but I found that the instructor was really informative. It was quite educational. And the reason, one of the other reasons I'm bringing it to attention tonight is I think that sometimes in our small community, we don't always necessarily recognize people who have a lot of education experience. We often think, well, if they're in a much bigger city, they are much more knowledgeable, but I certainly would recommend this course to anybody. I think the 16 hours is well worth it, because we never know when any of us could be assistants to help somebody else. So I say that was an A+ job there. The other thing that I would like to remind people of is September 30th marks the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. That's not only an Ontario government, but also a national statutory holiday now. And the purpose of that, of course, is for people to make that effort to learn more about this very serious issue and the tragedy that had, an injustice that had occurred. Certainly throughout our country. I think when we have a number of First Nations in our area, we need to really get ourselves informed. So I'm hoping that everybody will do their best to get more education, and my sympathy goes out to anybody who was a victim of residential schools. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, staff, and public. I must say that the rain is coming down tremendously hard right now, and I don't know whether it's feeding through to everybody else, but it's really hard to hear everybody on the computer right at the moment. Anyway, September 8th, 9th, and 10th there were pool committee meetings. There was a lot to discuss over those 3 days. And there was participation from all the municipalities, council, the representatives and staff. And because we had to get the agreement in by September the 10th. Bottom line is that there is an agreement with the area municipalities to build a pool and recreation complex. So the new board has been formed. And so the agreement could be signed. So $23+ million can start to flow into our area to build this complex. I want to thank our staff, the staff of the West Parry Sound municipalities and the councils for working through this very important process to get this facility, which will be a one-of-a-kind in our area and the district of Parry Sound as well. I'd also like to thank Donald Sanderson for chairing the committee, and he's going to be the chair of the new board as well. We appreciated his leadership on this. And I'd also like to thank the Wisconsin and Shawanaga First Nations for their support in this project as well. So we look forward to great things in the future and something that is going to, I think, move this area forward, stabilize it, and create something new and opportunity. Also want to mention we have a movie being shot here. So if you see the activity going on, which is good, and it's good for local business as well. September 17th, I had an AMO audit committee meeting. And I'd also like to extend a thank you to all those who put their names forward to run in this past federal election. And congratulations to Scott Aitchison, our returning MP. I have an email that I want to read from a Dr. Lloyd Brown John. And he wrote and he said, recently I had intended to pass through Parry Sound, but had the sense to stop and discover. Among our discoveries was the wonderful garden. They were looking for the museum called Tower Hill Heritage Garden. Magnificent and in an unusual location. What a lovely oasis on a warm August day. Your town should be proud of the garden and even a bit of the view. We were too old to climb the towers. Anyway, only concern that the goldfish pond looked like it needed fresh water. But as they were not hockey people, we chose the boat tour instead and have added Parry Sound's garden to our recommended visit list. So I certainly want to commend those that look after Ms. Bossart and the crew that are up at the Tower Hill that look after the garden. It is recognized and it is appreciated. So I have two other items. It has to do with Truth and Reconciliation Week. Council and the public will recall at the last meeting, Resolution 2021-113 was passed proclaiming September 30th as National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. In recognition of this day, I encourage everyone to wear an orange shirt. I'd also like to mention that the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation has an online learning platform extending the Every Child Matters program from last year's single day to a whole week of Truth and Reconciliation programming. Virtual programming starts on Monday next week and includes short videos created by Indigenous storytellers, followed by conversations with elders, knowledge keepers, survivors, and the children of survivors of residential schools. Topics to be covered include, on day 1, land and treaties, day 2, languages and culture, day 3, truth and reconciliation, day 4, orange shirt day, and day 5, elder youth knowledge transfer. While the educational series is particularly aimed at students from grades 5 to 12, it's also available for the general public to view. Just search Truth and Reconciliation Week and the website for the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation to come up with the schedule of events and registration information. In addition, I'm aware the West Parry Sound Health Center is inviting leadership from the health system partner organizations to join with them in affirming their commitment to truth, respect, and active participation in the journey to reconciliation. The local the local ceremony led by Cultural Resources Coordinator Lisa Ross will be held outdoors on September 30th at 9 a.m. at the West Parry Sound Health Center. The next bit of information is going to be part of a media release with regard to the municipal town office and fire hall to resume in-person services. Municipal office and fire hall to resume in-person services September 27th, 2021. The town of Parry Sound is pleased to announce that on September 27th, 2021, the municipal office and the fire hall will open to the public with controlled access In addition to the Bobby Orr Community Center and the Charles W. Stockey Center for the Performing Arts have also reopened to the public. In response to the provincial health orders to reduce the spread of COVID-19, the municipal office and the fire hall were closed to the public on March 18th, 2021. March 18th, 2020. In accordance with established COVID-19 health and safety protocols, visitors will access the main reception area using an intercom and/or buzzer system. This controlled access will ensure compliance with capacity limits to ensure physical distancing is maintained. Therefore, when arriving at the municipal office and fire hall, members of the public should be prepared for a brief wait. In addition, face coverings are required to be worn by members of the public in all municipal facilities. It is recommended that members of the public book an appointment with staff to ensure an appropriate meeting space is available. Short transactional services such as bill payments can be performed without an appointment. No contact payments for tax and utility payments made through online banking, pre-authorized payment at financial institutions or by check at the drop box located in the municipal office are still encouraged. Additionally, staff will continue to provide municipal services through the curbside pickup and online through the town's website, email, and over the phone. Payment of provincial offenses fines can be made in person as well as by phone at 705-746-2553. Again, 705-746-2553. Mail or online at www.paytickets.ca. Again, www.paytickets.ca. To request an appointment, please contact the appropriate department at 705-746-2101. Again, 705-746-2101, or visit the town's website. Contact us on the webpage. Council and committee meetings will continue to be held virtually at this time. I just wanted to check to see, oh, it's good. That's my report. So on with the meeting. We'll start with item 911. It's moved by Councillor Horn and seconded by Councillor McCann. The council accepts a 2020 annual building department report as attached for information purposes. Discussion, and Mr. Vandermeer, do you have anything you wanted to add for the public's sake?
There we go. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, your worship and council. Nothing really to add. This is just kind of one of those legislated reports through the Ontario Building Code made for public information. So with the help of the Treasury Department, we put this report together for you, and I'm here if you have any further questions.
Okay. Councillor Borneman has one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Vandermeer, I'm curious, you know, the report was well done. It appears that we had a good year with respect to the issuance of building permits, yet we didn't operate in the black. I'm wondering if the costs of our permits and services are in line with others, and I'll start with that. Are we within the norm for the price of our services, or does this need to be raised or lowered?
Right. Through your worship. As you know, I've been here less than a year, but in the past bunch of years, I have done considerable amount of surrounding building departments and fee analysis. I do find that the fee schedule that we have in our current building bylaw would present a slightly lower than average fee structure. We are starting to work on revising the current building bylaw, and so the plan is to present something in a public meeting in the coming months to kind of show what the proposed changes are going to be. But to answer your first question, the goal, and even stated through the Building Code Act, is not really to intentionally have a net gain or any type of profit through the building department program. It's generally supposed to be revenue neutral. And obviously that's almost impossible to do just based on budget forecasting. But I do believe that there's some opportunities to make some adjustments to get closer to that, closer to the zero.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No. Okay. Anyone opposed to passing this resolution? No, then that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Vandermeer.
Thank you very much.
And I just remembered that we were going to move forward item 10.1.1. Okay. So we have 10.1.1. I don't have a mover and seconder on any of this at the moment. So I can ask for movers and seconders to work through this, and then we get to the end, and as discussed, we could defer this. Ms. Johnson, correct?
Your worship, I believe there should be a resolution there as 10.1.1A as a resolution as opposed to a bylaw. The bylaw was prepared should council wish not to defer the decision and go directly to bylaw. There should be a resolution.
Okay, there is a resolution, just 10.1.1. Okay. All right. So the resolution would be 10.1.1 and then 10.1.1A then for the bylaw?
Well, if council chooses to pass the resolution as it is written,
yes,
it defers any further action, and so the bylaw would not be brought forward. The bylaw was there available should should council wish to read it.
Okay, all right, good enough then. Moved by Councillor Burden and seconded by Councillor Keith that a decision on Z21/05 McMurray and Gibson Ryan for 2713571 Ontario Incorporated to be deferred so that the applicant may revise their development concept to meet the intent of the official plan as it relates to the character and scaling. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Councillor McCann.
Well, I thought maybe just for transparency, maybe Mr. Elgee could speak to this a bit, just so that in reference to the changes being talked about here for the public's benefit.
Okay.
Certainly. Through your worship, staff's recommendation to defer is essentially based upon the idea that the reduced setbacks and the height of the building make it quite imposing in that neighborhood. Largely, other situations where we've permitted 17-meter tall buildings, they're much further set back from the road, so they have less of an impact on neighboring properties or the right-of-way or sidewalks, what have you. Whereas this one, since the lot is so small, it really does loom over some of the adjacent development. And I think upon a site visit, you can kind of visualize how that would look. So in that regard, if it was 5 stories, or nothing at all, I would probably recommend defeat it. But I heard from the applicant tonight that they can likely revise it with a month, come back with something smaller, a different form of development. What that looks like remains to be seen, but at that time it can be brought back to council. Also, I have many comments from the public. Most of them have email addresses, so I can do my best to advise the public who've already commented of when it comes back and the change plans, and still work within the system.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? No. Okay, that's carried, so it's deferred. Okay. Item 931, moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann. The council hereby receives and accepts the variance report for a mid-year 2021, June 30th, 2021. That council hereby approves the expenses for council members for the period from January 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2021. Any discussion? Okay, anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? Nope, that's carried. Item 941A, moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Burden. The council accepts the quote from Fowler Construction Company Limited for granular A gravel per order in the amount of $19.11, including tax per ton, delivered to 35 McFarland Street, this being the only quote received. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? Nope, that's carried. Nine four one B, moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann. The council accepts the quote from Fowler Construction Company Limited to supply, deliver, blend, and stack winter sand in the amount of $21.56, including tax per ton, delivered to 35 McFarland Street, this being the only quote received. Discussion? Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? Oh, that's carried then. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Keith, that council accepts the quote from Daikin Incorporated for a laser guidance system for 3 of the town of Parry Sound's winter maintenance vehicles for approximately $11,592 plus tax, Daikin Incorporated being the only known supplier of this equipment. Mr. Kearns, do you want to explain what this is all about?
Certainly, Your Worship. So this piece of technology allows us to offer a safer plowing environment for the operators of the plow trucks. This is essentially a laser that is pre-aimed on top of the truck that indicates to the operator of the truck where the wing will pass as they're plowing. So obviously the trucks are rather large with the extended side wing out. It's hard for operators because that wing is a trailing point behind them. It's hard to judge where that's going to pass. So this is technology that allows us to provide an advance warning to the operator of the truck as to exactly where that piece of equipment is going to pass on the edge of the roadway. The idea being that obviously they are better able to control where that wing is and avoid obstacles, curbs, all those sorts of things in advance. So without having to rely on the legacy process of typically municipalities historically have employed a second person as a set of eyes to try and guide the driver, it's perhaps a very antiquated process. And with the advancement of these technologies, the majority of municipalities have transitioned away from using a physical set of eyes in the truck to try and pass that information along to the operator. So this will allow us to work to transitioning away from 2 people in the vehicle at a time plowing, as well as providing a safer operating environment for the truck operator with that advanced warning. So essentially that's the advantage here. It's a piece of safety equipment that provides some efficiencies to us in terms of effectiveness and efficiencies, essentially.
Okay. We've got questions. Councillor Backman and then Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Your Worship. This technology was something that I had learned about at OGRA. Actually, both Mr. Cairns and I attended a couple of years ago. And I'm very pleased to learn that we are moving in the direction of utilizing this because maybe you can maybe clarify, Mr. Cairns, but were there very few municipalities that really use the wingman anymore?
Yes, through your worship. It's probably realistically down to less than a handful of municipalities. And the reasons that some of them are still utilizing them are more labor relations versus efficiencies of operation. I've spoken to a few of them. I've spoken to a number of municipalities. I have some experience in other municipalities and certainly with plowing in the north. So it's a process that is not widely used, very rarely used, I would suggest nowadays, due to some of these advancements. And essentially, most municipalities will employ this type of technology as a transitional opportunity for the operators to learn. Then they become comfortable, and it's like anything. If you become comfortable with what you're operating, you get a good feel for the way in which it, where it passes. But this is still there as a reminder. So,
thank you,
Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cairns. I have a couple of questions. The training that's involved afterwards, once this, if it's approved tonight and this equipment is on the machines, where does that training occur? How long is the training? So that's my first question. Could you reply to that one, please?
Certainly, through your worship. I have some experience with this type of technology in my past, and it's not very training intensive. It's very intuitive. It's a very bright point on the road where the wing passes. It's mostly becoming familiar with and being comfortable with trusting the aim of the laser. So our intention is to look at the ability to perhaps modify some of the plow routes to allow drivers to, obviously our streets are very different in nature depending on which street you're providing plowing on. So the idea would be to transition to this, not all at once, but provide a level of comfort and the ability for the operators to learn the way the technology can complement their operations, but perhaps changing or modifying some of the plow routes so that perhaps the truck that heads out with just the single operator to start with is plowing some of the wider roads in town to offer that additional level of comfort with the new technology. Those are some ideas that we're contemplating.
So I got another question to that one before I go on to my further question, but did I kind of hear, are we kind of doing a touchy learn on the go? Is that really what you're looking at for on a bigger street? Is that what I'm hearing?
Through your worship. So we haven't solidified the exact plan. Those are some of the ideas we're thinking that transitioning away from our legacy process in which our operators are comfortable and moving a single driver with this technology on their own to some wider streets might be a good way of introducing the technology. That won't be the same driver all the time. Obviously, they rotate plow routes, so they will all get some experience with it and become comfortable with the technology. Now, that being said, I'm confident. I've seen the technology work. So we need to transition into this is something brand new. I don't think it will take all that long for folks to become comfortable with and trust the technology to allow us to move quicker through the process, perhaps.
Thank you. If I move on to my next question, the last one, I hope. If we no longer, because we've been kind of working under a more antiquated system, and we no longer need 2 people in the plow, where do you have some plan as to where that person then will be working? How have you figured that out, seeing as now we're saving on that extra person being in the vehicle?
Certainly, through your worship. So obviously that was a big consideration. It's a change, and the idea of providing efficiencies also led, in that discussion to us considering things that we can do as a municipality with the equipment that we currently own, better utilizing that workforce. So we do have equipment. We do have vehicles available. So for instance, one of the initial thoughts was we could perhaps be doing snow removal more often, perhaps more frequent as necessary on our own, rather than waiting and deploying our staff elsewhere to plow snow. They could perhaps be removing snow. We may be able to find efficiencies in our routes to ensure that the high traffic, high use routes are treated earlier, sooner, more often. Those are all ideas that we have. So part of the idea is to deploy our forces, our workforce, in a more efficient manner to get our work done internally, more efficiently.
So the last question to that, would it be fair to assume that you are going to then have some measurables so you can see which is more efficient in trying these different techniques afterwards?
Certainly, through your worship. Now, that one is a little tricky. I'm going to say yes, but it does take time with winter operations. Obviously, year over year, we don't have, typically we don't have comparable weather conditions and snowstorms and those sorts of things. So certainly we can have measurables. We will have to have an evaluation of, the number and type of weather events over a period of time. And I can't speak to our legacy data from that perspective, how much we have of it, but we can certainly do our best to look backwards at what we've been doing. But it would take a bit of time. Typically in snow removal or winter control operations, we don't like to use less than 5 years as an average to try and level out those peaks and valleys in terms of the weather conditions we get, in terms of forecasting expenditures and how severe a weather event or a winter may be in terms of weather events. So I'll say yes, but it may take some time.
Councilor McCann.
Yeah, so my question for Mr. Kearns is, and one of the things I learned about being on council was that the limitations for the town during a snow event was that you had to really try to guess how long the snow was going to fall before you sent the plows out. If you sent them out too early, the hours that the drivers could work were soon burned up. I'm wondering, with this technology, can you keep the plow machines on the road for a longer period of time, even if the men can't be out there? So in other words, the staggering isn't so much of I guess, a challenge anymore.
Through your worship. So yeah, conceptually, if we're going from 2 people to a single person in the plow, if someone reaches hours of work, we're not consuming 2 employees allotment of hours of work at a time. So yeah, there are those efficiencies as well, potentially, that we could deploy the second person on a second shift, for lack of better words. So yeah, there are those efficiencies as well. because hours of service is a legislated requirement, and it can be challenging. If we get some of those back-to-back snow squall days, certainly we never want to get to a point where we have to tell people we can't maintain the roads any longer because of hours of service. But so that's always a bit of a juggle in terms of managing the time available. But this type of process allows us to, again, it goes to effectiveness and efficiencies and freeing up people to be able to perform the appropriate tasks at the appropriate time.
Great. Okay, thank you.
If I could, Your Worship, suggest an amendment to the resolution. I should have included a statement in the resolution just after the cost plus tax, that it's for financial tracking purposes, so that I don't complicate things for our finance department in terms of tracking these expenditures. That we would like to add, sorry, I'm just looking for my wording now, a statement that this would be funded from the Municipal Modernization Reserve. So, and that aids our our finance department to be able to track it. And
sure, no, that's a good idea. Mover and seconder for that, Councilor McCann, Councilor Borneman. Any discussion on the amendment? Anyone opposed to passing the amendment? No. Okay. Anything further on this resolution as amended? Okay. Anyone opposed to passing this resolution as amended? Nope, it's carried then. Thank you. Moved by Councilor Borneman, second by Councilor McCann. The council accepts the estimated costs from Control Systems CA Incorporated of $34,000 for the design, implementation, and control portion of the pavement rehabilitation projects on Joseph Church and Bow Street. Kearns, I think maybe you better explain this one.
Certainly, Your Worship. So it's not very often that we in the world of public works come across something that's exciting, I guess, in terms of offering us the ability to do things. I'll say new, although this process is not new in Europe. It is relatively new in Ontario. So the process involves three-dimensional differential milling of asphalt. So this company is based out of the Czech Republic initially. They have been established in Toronto and Timmins as well. So in Timmins, they've been involved in a lot of mine work. So what they do, Control Systems in terms of paving projects will do a digital terrain model. So sorry, I'm trying to keep it, it is a complex process that has a lot of benefits. So I'll try and touch on some of the highlights. Traditionally in milling, you may have heard the term shave and pave, and you'll see that on the highway. Typically, a machine comes in and chews off a layer of asphalt, typically 50 millimeters in thickness. And then another machine comes along and lays a new asphalt layer, 50 millimeters in thickness, that is relatively smooth, typically. So that traditional milling process will average out all the deficiencies in the road surface. So you end up with, what appears to be a relatively smooth traveling surface. The problem with it is it does nothing to correct any of the deficiencies in crossfall and those sorts of things in drainage. So this company offers a service where they come in and do a digital terrain model of our roadway, rather than just taking 50 millimeters out and putting 50 millimeters back everywhere, even where it's not required. Basically, the digital process comes in and removes only what's required to repair the surface at the end of the paving process. So it corrects crossfall. And for us, that's very important because we have, particularly in these areas, curbs and gutters and storm sewers, which is not always of concern in some rural areas. So during the process, that is corrected. And typically what we're seeing from their data is a reduction in asphalt removal of somewhere between 30 and 50% on average. So when we look at that has a lot of benefits from a construction or from a rehabilitation process. We're not removing that much extra asphalt unnecessarily, which makes the milling process much faster, which also helps us reduce greenhouse gas emissions in that we are not purchasing new asphalt unnecessarily. So that so there's reductions typically in a lot of areas, including cost, time, and greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a lot of benefits when we're looking at this process, and part of the internal discussion was kind of looking at the you know, where's the catch sort of thing in this whole process. And it does take a little bit longer to plan, but the product also, we gain in life cycle lifespan of the final product. And they're seeing some places 5 to 7 years of extra life in the rehabilitation projects, so that our life cycle management is extended as well, which is better value for the dollar. So what we are proposing, and we had it, obviously this would be carrying over into next year. The plan was they were going to scan very quickly, and I'm not sure if the weather's going to cooperate in the short term necessarily. If we have approval to proceed with this process, they will be providing the scan this year, with our intention of moving into the project at the start of next paving season. So the advantage of doing these two projects together, and we've identified these areas of roadway as being good candidates because the in-ground infrastructure is in an acceptable condition to be a candidate for rehabilitation. When we look at fixing asphalt on top of the road, we also have to be considerate of what the condition of the storm pipes, the wastewater pipes, and the water pipes are underneath the road. Obviously, we don't want to be rehabilitating a surface if we have to dig it up in a few years to fix what's underneath. So these are good candidates from that perspective. They've had a look at it initially, both the milling company that has worked with control systems on some of their projects in Ontario, including Highway 10, Highway 17. They did some other work up around Sudbury as well. So they're very familiar with each other. The milling company came to look at it as well. What we want to do is have an expanded asphalt program next year, with this kind of being the core projects within it. And we've talked about some of the need for our side streets. So while that goes beyond what we're talking about here, what our plan would be to use the millings that do come off of this to supplement some of the remedial work on a few of the side streets that we need to consider repaving for next year as well. So there is some benefit in lumping these together in terms of saving mobilization costs, being able to move millings and have them reincorporated into some of the side streets that we're looking at right now while the grinding machine is on site. So we're looking at this more holistically, that rather than just doing a one street here, coming back and doing some paving here, these are obviously high volume roadways that are very important from our infrastructure perspective.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann.
Yeah, I think maybe you just answered the question for me there in your last statement. You mentioned the grinding machine. So we're not actually buying any kind of rolling stock or anything here. This is more of a service that we're buying. So it sounds good that we're only repairing what needs to be repaired. But what about in between the repairs? When you go through this process, the parts that don't get fixed, how often do you have to come back with this process to get the next generation of deterioration? You know what I'm saying? Whereas if the whole asphalt was replaced, you might, not have to treat it for a number of years. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do, through your worship. So I guess there are sections of Joseph Street in particular that are in more distress than other sections of those projects we're looking at. So we'd be looking at a little thicker rehabilitation. Typically, what you see in pavement rehab projects doesn't involve complete remove and replace of asphalt. That's usually reserved for our rebuild projects, and that's kind of an industry standard. So we're trying to rehabilitate this asphalt to extend its life cycle and provide the best value for the municipality. So typically this will result in a better better product than just strictly taking 50 millimeters off the top and putting 50 millimeters back. It's going to allow us to correct the crossfall. Water in a roadway is one of the biggest detriments to a roadway. So if we are able to shed that water effectively, these things all lead into an extended life cycle of the rehabilitation. So yeah, it's not a brand new road. It will appear that way for quite some time, we hope, is the intention. And like I said, they're telling us that typically they're seeing from what would be an expected life cycle, they're adding 5 to 7 years by going through this process. Okay. And on the face of it and everything we're seeing going through it, there isn't an increased cost versus there's actually a decrease in cost typically over the traditional methods. So
okay, great.
One thing that's outside of our control, I should mention, is the cost of asphalt and the cost of the fossil fuel. So any time we have an opportunity to minimize the amount we need to purchase, that usually turns into at least an avoided expenditure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you. I think Councillor McCann asked part of my question, but what I'm still wondering about, I like the idea, there's no doubt about that. But what I'm wondering about is in the event, like we're trying this for our first time, and in the event that it doesn't cut it, shall we say, we don't get 5 years, we get 2 years. Is there some sort of guarantee by the company? Is there anything that says, okay, if it doesn't meet anywhere near life expectancy, we come back and run this through again? Is there anything like that?
Through your worship, I guess the short answer is no. And I'm not aware of any, even in a traditional process, because you're rehabilitating, they're not going to typically warranty subsurface issues. Now, we'd be looking at this process would involve 3 different contractors typically. So you have control systems, which does the design and the layout, and they actually feed their digital design into the milling machine to control the milling process to give us that base layer to work off of. So we have control systems, we have the grinding company, and then someone has to come in and lay the asphalt. And typically there isn't one company that does all of those things in any project that we're aware of. So from a traditional standpoint, it kind of involves the same players. Control systems is an additional participant in this process, but the advantage being we take out less asphalt, we grind less, which means less disruption in traffic while the process is going on. We have a better product at the end in terms of crossfall and drainage, and we can put some tangibles to greenhouse gas emission reductions, because we won't know exactly how much asphalt comes out until the project is complete. We have some estimates, and we're seeing, when we ran our internal estimates, we were very conservative in our numbers, which still showed it to be an advantageous process. I'm not a big gambler, so I don't like to take the high end of estimates and say this is what we're going to achieve. So we actually took lower than their low end estimates, and it still showed to be a benefit to us.
Okay, anything further? No? Okay, anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? Nope, okay, it's carried. Good work, Mr. Kearns. Moved by Councillor McCann and seconded by Councillor Burden the council authorized that an application be made to the Community Build Fund Capital Stream administered through the Ontario Trillium Foundation for the Bobby Orr Community Center HVAC units, and that the CAO Clayton Harris be confirmed as the person with signing authority. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to passing of this? Oh, Ms. McNamara.
I'm sorry to interrupt, if I may, for you, Your Worship. If we can make a small amendment to this resolution.
Okay.
I do have here noting that the CAO can be named person signing authority.
Yeah.
Mr. Harris will not return from holidays in time for this application to be due. So if we could change that to reflect Mike Kearns, the Director of Public Works.
So instead of the CAO, the Director, Mike Kearns. I was having a hard time hearing for the rain that pounding on the roof here. So Mike Kearns instead of CAO. Okay.
Correct.
Do we have can I have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Borneman and Councillor Horn. Any discussion on that? Councillor McCann?
Just to nitpick, because the reading's to CAO, should it be the acting CAO at this time in Mr. Harris's place, which would be Mr. Thompson? Or is it just nitpicking? Does it matter?
Your worship, we talked about this beforehand. We're comfortable with this saying that the Director of Public Works, Mike Kearns, be confirmed as the person with the signing authority.
Okay.
There's my answer. Okay.
There you go. Okay. Anything further on the amendment? No? Anyone opposed to the passing of the amendment? No, that's carried then. The amendment's carried. Give me 1 second here. So it's to be that the Director of Public Works, Mike Kearns, be confirmed as the person with signing authority. Okay, any discussion on the resolution as amended? Nope, okay. Anyone opposed to the passing of this resolution? Nope, that's carried then. Okay, next is item 10.1.2, moved by Councillor Burden, second by Councillor McCann. The bylaw number 2021-7170 being a bylaw to establish prescribed times for setting open air fires, precautions to be taken, and a system for ensuing permits for open air burning within the town of Parry Sound be considered as read a first time. All in favor? And that's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor McCann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. Councillor McCann.
Stubborn mouse here tonight. So as I understand it from the wording, you need a permit to establish an open fire. Is that correct? Is there ever a time that you can light an open fire that you don't need a permit for?
Yeah, Your Worship, it's John Tuck, Parry Sound Fire Prevention Officer. Not after this bylaw's been passed that everyone that would like to have a fire of any type in the town of Parry Sound will require a permit. It just makes it easier for us to maintain the safety for our public members, because some of the changes we've made in the open air bylaw, we've made the setbacks for a fire, we've cut them in half. And by our office inspecting the permit sites, that's how we'll keep the safety up for everyone in the town of Parry Sound.
So as a follow-up then, if you have a gang on the beach or off to one side, I'm thinking maybe on the property there at the Bob's Point, if you're camping or you're having an out, like a day camp type of thing, I can't light a fire and roast hot dogs over that fire without a permit.
Well, that's town property, so you're not allowed to burn on town property,
Yeah,
I believe. So
I guess that's a bad yeah, but okay, fair enough.
So, so you will, one of the changes we're making to the open air bylaw. So if you wish to have a fire on your property, say, for example, to have some hot dogs and marshmallows, you can go online. You can pay for a permit. If I've been there before, there'll be no inspection required, and you'll be able to just print off your own permit, pay for it online, and you're golden 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we're trying to make everything a little easier and a little more customer friendly with the new process.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Bachman, then Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Mr. Tech, just in general, many people in the neighborhood that I live in do have fires in the evenings throughout the summer. And I'm just wondering what issues have may have arisen that suggest we need to make these changes? Have there been issues or that you might be able to speak to?
Yes, we have had many public members confused, and they also get irritated by smoke coming from the fires from their neighbors. This gives us an opportunity to try and make it better for the people having a fire and better for the neighbors around the individual fires. A lot of the new buildings now have air exchangers in the building, so you can imagine some of the smoke coming from a fire being sucked into your new home that's pretty airtight, and the smoke can get in there and irritate the family members from that area. Houses are pretty close in town, so this is a way that we can try and to come up with a reasonable plan without having to make it difficult for anyone to have a fire or cancel their permit, which we will have the authority to do. I'm hoping that answers your question. Yes.
Just as a follow-up, so then, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is if somebody is getting smoke exchange and they don't like the fact, but the neighbors are being they are within the rules and regulations, we wouldn't just take away their permit because smoke is being exhausted into a fan system, or?
So we do have the option of suspending the permit if the fire continues to irritate a neighbor or neighbors. That is in the bylaw to do, and in the past we've had to do that to a few, but it's been very few.
Okay. Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Tuck. I know that the fire department and yourself have been quite cooperative and certainly very helping to many residents in the community. But I still have two questions, basically. One, when somebody wants to have a fire in their own backyard, according to the bylaw, would there be limits to the time that they could have their fire? Like if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, is that a time it's time to snuff it out, or once you get the permit, you can burn for the 24 hours? That's my first question. Thanks.
So right now we do allow them with a recreational fire, we call it, an outdoor fireplace. It has to be certain size. they can't be burning man-made materials. And I would answer that as a yes. They would be allowed to burn anytime during that 24-hour period. Again, we've had one household that had been burning for 24 hours. We received a complaint to our office, and we're able to deal with that and come up with a compromise for both neighbors. So our goal is for people to enjoy the fire, and so hopefully we keep trying to complete that goal.
Okay.
My second question then is, I noticed in the report, it certainly sounded accommodating, but I wish you could just clarify a little further. It said staff will continue to assist individuals who do not have access to the internet or struggle with the online system. What does that really mean, please?
So that means there's a lot of our public members out there are not familiar with computers and don't have access to them. And so our department, our office will still continue on if they call in and are not able to get through our online service, that we will go to them personally and with a permit and make sure that they are able to get a permit without using the online. So we're hoping that will cut down. That's what we're doing now. So that should cut down a lot of our hours and make it a little easier for our office to continue in offering the service.
Well, I would just say that certainly is very good public service, and I'm certainly glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? No? Okay, that's carried then. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Burden. That bylaw number 2021-7171 being a bylaw to amend the fees bylaw 2010-5408 to include licensing fees for backyard hens and update fire permit fees be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third reading? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Borneman, second by Councillor Keith, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions, Ms. Kruger. The first question had to do with on the background report, page 2, it indicated the licensing fee and of course the next year, the annual fee. And I'm wondering, in the event there was a reinspection of the hennery, as I call it, and it was not approved, is there an appeal process for the owner of the hennery?
Through your worship, at this time, there isn't necessarily an appeal process. An owner would be given an opportunity to rectify the situation, provided it was a requirement that could be rectified. If it were a matter of a zoning issue or something that they were either unwilling to rectify or unable to rectify, then they would not be able to license. If it was simply a case of a few alterations that needed to be made to bring them into compliance, they would be given that opportunity to rectify the situation so that they could have a license for the keeping of hens.
Yep.
Thank you. My other question though, in this report of the backyard chickens license, it certainly also indicates that it's a responsibility of the owner, or it is in reference to the manure of the chicken manure, I'll call it, that it's must be disposed of properly, here it is, and in accordance with all regulations. So how does somebody know what the regulations are? Where are they? Because I don't see it in the application. So where do they look that up to know what the regulations are, please?
Through your worship, the regulations for manure disposal was within our keeping of backyard hen, the bylaw that was passed at the previous council. So there are limitations. We do not allow for composting or keeping of the manure on site. And our current waste provider will not do any type of pickup. So an owner would need to ensure that they have a method of disposing that would meet with those regulations.
Yes, Councillor Keith.
So yes, so just to clarify, I want to have whatever backyard chickens, and I understand that I'm supposed to dispose of the manure in accordance with the regulations. Where do I find the regulations? Is it on a town website? Is it when I apply for the application? Somebody gives me that regulation so I know upfront what I'm supposed to do rather than having a complaint down the road. Could you clarify that, please?
Certainly, through your worship, we would go over all the points of the bylaw while going through the licensing process. So they would be made aware of all the regulations. The application does have that in point form, but I understand it maybe doesn't go into as much clarity as the bylaw. So that would be provided to the applicant as well. It will be put on our website. While we are updating, we need to still create our hen information page, and that information would all be there for the applicants.
Okay, Councillor McCann.
Yes, for Ms. Kruger then. So I know I expressed my concern when we passed this last time, and I guess I'll ask again. I think the most difficult thing to enforce is going to be ensuring that people dispose of the chicken poop properly. You're saying you cannot put it in your household garbage and leave it out by the curb for pickup. Is that correct?
Through your worship, our services have indicated, our waste removal services have indicated that they would not take it as part of household garbage, as that's not something that is considered exactly a regular household item for pickup.
Yeah.
And we wanted to ensure that we did not allow for composting on site due to the concerns that that could create odor in a neighborhood. So they would have to secure a method of disposing of their waste in accordance with that.
I mean, it's obvious to tell whether or not people are composting or not because it's rather transparent, but, and forgive me for sounding like Big Brother here, but so people will have to find some means to get rid of this. It's going to be a very, very difficult thing to enforce. Would you expect that licensees would or could, maybe in good faith, or should be providing some means of proof of dispensing of the chicken poop?
Through your worship, we would ask that they review the regulations and determine how they would be disposing of that manure. That would be something that was discussed during the licensing process.
Okay.
You're correct. We may not know if they are indeed sneaking it into, I guess, the household garbage. However, if their garbage service was denied by our waste provider, that would in turn create an issue that would be fairly easily rectified and realize that there's a problem here and they've been advised not to put it in a household garbage. They would be refused service at that point if the company determined that they were using their household garbage for such.
Still, that would be very hard for them to trace, though, I would imagine.
Through your worship, it may be difficult. That was the stance of the waste provider, that they would say that they would not take it if that were something that was being put out at the curb. If it was included in household garbage, we may not know. However, we will be discussing this with the potential owner at the very beginning of these conversations, that they do need to ensure they have a correct method of disposing of it.
Well, I guess just to finalize with a comment, I find it interesting. I think you really want to do this to put yourself out to go through getting the proper enclosures for your hens, the food, disposing of the waste and such. I think you really want to do this, and I'm wondering how many people may give this a try for a year or so and think, it's not worth it. You know, that I'm curious to see what this will look like about 2 or 3 years from now.
Okay. Anything further with regard to the bylaw? No. Anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? No. It's carried. By Councillor Keith, second by Councillor Horn, that bylaw number 2021-7172 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a West Parry Sound Recreation and Cultural Center Joint Municipal Service Board agreement for the purpose of acting as an agent on behalf of the municipalities in the construction, maintaining, and operation of the West Parry Sound Recreation and Cultural Center be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Keith. Bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
So, Mr. Mayor, this is a real victory for us, and I know we're all very excited. And I know that you talked about a bit about this in your report, but maybe perhaps again for the benefit of the public, can you tell us where we're going from here now? What are things going to look like 6 months from now as we move forward with this project?
6 months from now?
Or even 3 months?
Even 3 months. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork that has to be done, like with the ISIP organization. From that, we're moving then to the engineering and architectural phase, okay, so that we can get some sort of a design concept of what this building is going to actually look like. There will also be a fundraising component where people will be, I know that Mayor McDermott's very interested in leading the charge on a fundraising effort. So that's greatly appreciated. So they'll be working with the municipalities in this committee to move this forward so that we have some concept of how the building's going to look, what's going to be inside of it, and who's going to operate it, which I think everyone's hoping that the Y is going to be doing this, and then bringing that forward back to our committee so that it can be all discussed with hopefully a groundbreaking ceremony probably in the spring of next year. So that would be the hope, to work through the winter to get all of this done so that we can move forward in the spring and then hopefully go to tenders. So
lots of homework.
Lots of homework, lots of work, but you want to know something? As I said before, it's going to be worth it in the end. So
absolutely
good. 23 plus $23 million is not a small amount of money, and we want to make sure this is done right. Councillor Backman.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just reviewing some of the comments in the on page 4 under delegated authority. It does note under 2-8 receiving funding from upper levels of government, but it doesn't speak to applying for government grants. So I was just wondering if that means that if grants were, does that mean that they can apply for grants and receive them, or would that have to go back to the different municipalities?
Well, as far as the grants go for this particular project, we've got the ISIP grant. So I'm not aware of being able to stack under this particular program. So I'm not sure. That would have to be something outside of the scope of this particular project then. which possibly could be, but at this present time, the focus is on the actual center itself. Ms. Johnson, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, Your Worship. I would just say that this is the establishment of the board, and this board has the authority to manage and operate the facility, well, they'd be contracting out the operation, but the governance. And so fundraising, obtaining sponsorships is itemized as item E in that. So that would include all the kinds of, and applying for grants, that sort of thing as well.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And again, it was just because it articulated they're specifically receiving. So I figured it was towards the ISIP grant, but I just want to make sure. Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay. Councilor Borneman.
Well, as much hard work and good intention has gone into this project over the last number of years, now the real work begins, I guess. Delivering this project on time and on budget is going to be a monumental task. 4.1% inflation in August. Engineering firms, construction firms taxed to the max across the province. There's probably not a worse time in recent memory to be building a facility of this nature in some respects. So the board, the people who are at the helm here are going to have to be incredibly diligent in moving this project forward if we're to get what we want for the money that we've have available.
Yeah, I believe one of the things that's being looked at right now too is a project manager for the actual project itself. I mean, for something of this scale, I
hope he speaks engineer.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think those of you might remember we had a project manager when we built the Charles W. Stockey Center and Bobby Orr Hall of Fame. So, this is, I don't know, like it's even more complex, I guess, in some ways than that particular build, but and it's a lot more expensive. So having somebody to make sure that we've got that, you're right, that engineerese or whatever you want to call it, that we're able to actually do that, keep us on budget, online, and make sure that the right materials are being used when it comes to construction is really, really important. It was necessary then, it's going to be necessary now. So, and that'll be something that this new committee will certainly have its eyes and ears on as to how that's moving along, and make sure that we're getting regular reports from that manager. So that's all part of the process that has to be carried out once the committee gets rolling. So, any other questions? No. Anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? It's carried then. Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Keith and seconded by Councillor Horn that bylaw number 2021-7173, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a service agreement with Automotive Materials Stewardship for the continued collection of hazardous materials, including antifreeze, oil containers, and oil filters, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? It's carried. Are all members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Keith, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Discussion. Councillor Borneman.
Mr. Cairns, what is happening with used tires? We used to have a spot up there. I didn't see them mentioned in this. How is that being managed?
Certainly, through your worship. So tire stewardship was actually one of the very first items to transition to full producer responsibility. So tires, through Ontario Tires Stewardship, there are a number of depots in each area of the province that are required to accept used tires. Now, there are some caveats in terms of quantity and that sort of thing. I can't remember. Presumably, if you had 4 tires at home, you can take them and drop them off at an approved Ontario Tire Stewardship depot. So there is a website that shows locations locally within the town of Parry Sound, which are obligated to accept your tires. So this is another one of the producer responsibility transitions in terms of recycling. Blue box, obviously, we've had lots of conversations over the years, and that is in a slower transition. But tire stewardship was one of the very first ones. So people can look on the Ontario Tire Stewardship website, and they are obligated to receive your tires free of charge. And the requirements are on their website. They're very, I would suggest they're very liberal in terms of what you can bring them at no cost to you. And I would also suggest that if anybody, I've had some experience with this in my past, and if anybody experiences an issue in dropping those tires off, please communicate that to the Ontario Tire Stewardship folks. So the RPRA is the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority. And they are kind of the agency that polices issues within those programs, because there is an obligation for them to accept them.
Okay. That's a good question, Councillor Borneman, because I hadn't really heard that description as to what's going on, and you know that there are locations within the community that people can drop them off. And if they check online, they can find out who it is. That's really good information. Councillor McCann.
I would assume, well, I would think perhaps maybe that if it becomes the producer's responsibility, that it sounds like, Mr. Kearns, that the garage centers would be the ones who would be accepting the tires. And are they paid by this stewardship program to for their own trouble, especially people who are bringing tires in that they didn't buy from that particular merchant?
Through your worship, I can't speak to the individual agreements. I do know, and I participated in my past in some of those transition discussions, and when the program was being contemplated, how it was going to roll out. The producers are mandated, and this is going to be a very similar concept within all of the recyclable material groups that we're going to be dealing with over the years, including Blue Box eventually. That's not that far down the road now, but the producers are mandated to recycle a specific percentage of the product that they produce. So the idea behind that is it's created a commodity situation for used tires. So if you are tire company A and you produced X, you're required to, it's somewhere in the 80% range because of the wear of tires, and the tires in particular are a little bit different because the product wears out and your tread disappears and that sort of thing. It's obviously not recoverable. But I think it's on the order of 80% that they're required to recover. So, and there are agreements within those producer responsible organizations with the province and with the producer organizations. So they created a commodity in the used tire industry. So it's actually something those people need back. They can't have you, can't make too many tire swings for not enough to, they need that back to meet their requirements under the legislation. So, and the concept of all of that has been a good one, I think, and seems to have been working out in terms of being able to recover more of those commodities. So the idea of producer responsibility is, you kind of perhaps encourage the producers to become a little more innovative, whether it's in producing their product or figuring out what to do with the life cycle of it.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, Mr. Kearns, and maybe I'm misunderstanding here, but I do not understand why. I understand the practice now where the individual who has tires can look up on the website and find out where they would drop off their tires. But what I don't understand, for the sake of education's sake, why we wouldn't have on the website clearly, so that people are, when they're looking at what can they bring to the landfill, that we would have a message saying tires, look up this website, or etc., as a form of education. So then people aren't dragging tires off still to the landfill site. So it would be a means of education. Is that not possible, or is that part of the plan, just as each year when people received a bulletin and whatever, they get a colored sheet, whatever, green, pink, whatever, and they're allowed one load of pickup chunk of stuff that they want to get rid of at the landfill site? It seems to me that would be the other place. Definitely you would put a piece of information in for education. Is that not possible, or is that going to be part of the plan of education there?
Through your worship, certainly that's something we can do pretty easily. We have the ability, even I can generate a QR code from a website. So us passing along information in a range of methods is certainly something we can do. So we'll take a look at what we have right now up for information. And certainly we can direct them to those websites, because I've used it. I haven't looked at it in a couple of years since it came out originally, but I know there's an interactive map, and it pops up with little locations, and you click on, store A, B, C, and it tells you what they will accept. So I think one of the advantages with the tire program, and it was at least a couple of years ago, that it didn't, there was an allowance for on-rim delivery as well, which was, I don't know if that's still in place or not, but it was a much easier program to deal with. And frankly, the idea was to start to get those costs off the municipalities and back to the people that are producing the tires. Frankly, when you buy a tire now, you pay a fee. So you're paying for that recycling already. So those folks, that perhaps goes to that payment to the collectors. Perhaps that's part of how they fund the collection. So by municipalities continuing to accept, we don't, you could do it. It's very costly administratively, and there were a number of problems a few years ago in getting companies to actually pick the tires up. So many municipalities made the choice to remove themselves from that entire process, because there was more than adequate coverage for folks to be able to properly recycle their tires. So, but yeah, we can certainly take a look at what we have available and refresh that, update it, and make it more accessible if it's not there already.
Okay. Anything further with regard to this bylaw? Anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? Nope, that's carried then. Moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor McCann, that bylaw number 2021-7174, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council, be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Anyone opposed to the passing of this bylaw? Nope, that's carried. Okay. Prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, October the 5th, 2021 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held via Zoom video conferencing and will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. Council meeting schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. For Cogeco listings, contact Cogeco at www.yourtv.tv. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Take care.
Good night, everyone.